They called them the demon triplets. 17 nannies had quit. But when a woman named Maya Carter walked into that mansion, everything changed. A young woman stood silently by the doorway in the sprawling mansion of Palo Alto, where glass walls reflected the California sunset. Her name was Maya Carter. Before her eyes, the grand living room of the Walker estate looked nothing short of a battlefield. Red paint splattered across white walls, pillows torn apart, feathers floating through the air like snow in summer. $1,000,000 paintings leaned crooked against the floor, and in the middle of the chaos stood 3 little boys, Liam, Noah, and Caleb, screaming, hurling toys at the wall, tears mixing with fury. A toy truck rolled to Maya's feet. The eldest, Liam, shouted with a breaking voice, "You'll never make us like you! We don't need another nanny! We want Mom!" His 2 brothers stood behind him, gripping each other's hands. 3 little soldiers defending themselves against a world they no longer understood. The air in the room was thick, not just with noise, but with grief. Anyone else would have turned and run. The 17 nannies before her had done precisely that, each leaving this mansion with terror in their eyes and a promise never to return. But Maya was different. She didn't see bad kids. She saw 3 small souls struggling in the wreckage of loss. Those tear-filled eyes, with the eyes of children who once held the whole world in their mother's arms, and lost it all in a single afternoon. She took a slow breath, stepped carefully through the wreckage, and spoke softly. So softly it sounded like a lullaby. "I know you miss your mom, but I'm not here to replace her. I'm here because I know what it feels like when your world falls apart." The triplets looked up, startled. No one had ever spoken to them like that, not with anger, not with pity, but with understanding. Liam narrowed his eyes, guarded. "What do you know about us anyway?" Maya knelt, meeting their eyes. "Not much. But I do know this. You're scared. You're angry. And you think that if you make me hate you enough, I'll leave like everyone else. But I'm not going anywhere." The boys glanced at one another, unsure. Maya rose, brushed feathers from her dress, and smiled gently. "Before the sun sets today, I'll show you something. That even when your heart is shattered, there's still a way to love again." Then, footsteps echoed down the long marble hall. The boys froze. Their defiance melted into fear. "Daddy's home," Caleb whispered. "He's gonna be mad." Maya didn't move. She didn't yet know that within minutes, she would come face to face with Ethan Walker, a man of immense wealth but a broken spirit, and step into a journey no nanny had ever dared to take. The journey to heal a family torn apart. On the 40th floor of Walker Dynamics, surrounded by a sea of San Francisco lights, Ethan Walker sat still, staring at the phone ringing for the 3rd time that morning. He didn't need to check the caller ID. He knew it could only be Lisa, his loyal assistant, or his son's school. He sighed and answered, his voice hoarse and weary. "Lisa, go ahead. Which bad news comes first this time?" On the other end, her cautious voice came through. "The bad news is, the school just called. The boys started a food fight in the cafeteria. They locked their teacher in the supply room and refused to come out of the playground slide." Ethan closed his eyes. The image of his luxurious office, the awards, the framed certificates, suddenly felt meaningless. "And the worst news?" he asked quietly. "The 17th nanny just quit. She said, and I quote, 'No amount of money is worth losing my sanity every day.'" Silence filled the room. Only the soft sound of rain blended with his heavy breathing. Ethan leaned forward, elbows on the desk, hands pressed to his forehead. Pressure, guilt, grief. It all felt like he was living inside his own personal punishment. 6 months ago, he was the very image of success, a founder, a young billionaire, the husband of Grace Walker, the woman who made the world believe in simple love amidst wealth. She was a pediatrician. Her smile could warm an entire room. Then, one rainy afternoon, she never came home again. A car accident. A birthday gift box lay unopened on the passenger seat, a present meant for him. From that day, Ethan didn't just lose his wife. He lost the heart of their home. His triplet sons, Liam, Noah, and Caleb, turned into 3 mirrors of his own pain. They rebelled, screamed, threw things, tore up photos of their mother. And he did what men often do when they don't know how to hurt properly. He buried himself in work. Every night he stayed late, afraid to return to the empty house that once echoed with Grace's laughter. Afraid of those 3 little pairs of eyes looking up at him as if to ask, "Why didn't Mom come back? And why did you let it happen?" He bowed his head and muttered to himself, "I can run an empire, but I can't manage my own children." Lisa entered quietly, placing a cup of coffee on the desk. She hesitated. "Ethan, should I keep looking for another nanny?" "Of course. Double the salary. Someone out there must still be desperate enough to try." Lisa paused, her voice low. "You know, people are starting to call your house the house that breaks people." Ethan said nothing. He only stared out the window, the city lights reflected in his bloodshot eyes. Once, he believed there was no problem money couldn't solve. Now he realized, you can buy everything, except peace in a child's heart. A gust of wind slipped through the window frame. Light shimmered on the family photo sitting on his desk. Grace smiled, holding the triplets in her arms. Ethan standing behind them, happy, unguarded, unaware that it would be the last picture they ever took together. He reached out, touching the edge of the frame, and whispered, "Grace, I've forgotten how to make the boys believe that love still exists." Elsewhere in the city, a woman named Maya Carter opened her old laptop, reading a job post that said, "Nanny urgently needed for 3 energetic boys." And she had no idea that with one single click, she was about to change the fate of 4 lives, forever. Across the city of San Francisco, in a small, worn-down apartment overlooking an overpass, Maya Carter sat before her aging laptop, the glow of the screen reflecting off her tired face. A few unpaid bills, a cracked mug, and a faded photograph of her younger self with her parents lay on the table. She'd been unemployed for 2 months. The family she once worked for had moved to Europe. The other job listings asked for younger nannies, degrees in child psychology, Ivy League certifications. But Maya only had 8 years of experience and a heart that had once been broken. She scrolled through hundreds of listings, ready to shut her laptop when one line made her finger pause. Urgently hiring. Experienced nanny for 3 young boys. Previous candidates found the position challenging. She let out a soft laugh. Challenging was how rich people said, "My kids are out of control." Out of habit, she almost skipped it. But then, in the corner of the page, a name caught her eye. Employer, Ethan Walker, CEO of Walker Dynamics. Maya had heard of the Walker family. Everyone in the city had. The articles, the whispers, the photos of 3 tear-streaked boys crying outside their school gates. The cold headlines. Billionaire's demon triplets drive away 17 nannies. She clicked the post and reread the story everyone already knew. 6 months ago, Grace Walker, Ethan's wife, had died in a car accident. She left behind her husband and their 6-year-old triplets. Her death hadn't just taken a mother, it had shattered the soul of an entire family. Maya sat silently. Outside, rain tapped gently against the window. A familiar ache rose inside her chest, the kind only those who have lost everything could understand. When Maya was 7, a fire had burned down the small house where her parents slept. She survived, but from that day on her world became a rotation of strange rooms and temporary faces. 11 foster homes. 11 times she packed her toys into plastic bags. As she grew older, she came to understand. Children who act out aren't bad. They're just afraid of being loved and losing it again. She remembered what one of her old guardians once told her. Maya, the kids who cause the most trouble are usually the ones who need the most hugs. That sentence had followed her all her life. And tonight, as her eyes lingered on the words, challenging position, her heart stirred. She whispered to herself, "Those boys don't need a nanny. They need someone who knows what pain feels like." Maya opened a blank document and began to type the most straightforward, most honest job application she'd ever written. "I don't have a fancy degree. I don't have prestigious certifications. But I know what happens when a child loses their mother. I know how it feels when people walk away because you're too difficult. And I know that sometimes the only thing that can save a child is someone who stays, even when they're pushed away." She paused, looked at the old photo of her parents and whispered, "Maybe for the first time in my life, I'm not running from pain anymore." Then she clicked send. Just one click. Small, simple, but powerful enough to change the destiny of an entire family. Across town in the cold, silent Walker mansion, Ethan sat alone by the window, the light reflecting off his empty expression. He didn't know that among the dozens of polished resumes waiting on his desk, there was one belonging to a woman who wasn't coming to teach his children obedience, but to teach them how to love again. The next morning, the California sky looked freshly washed after the night's rain. Sunlight spilled across the trees and glimmered against the white fences surrounding Walker Estate, the grand mansion nestled in the quiet heart of Palo Alto. Maya Carter parked her small car before the iron gates and took a deep breath. She didn't bring much, just a modest handbag, a few documents, and a fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, her past could be the reason someone finally kept the door open. The gatekeeper stared at her, surprised. No one had shown up for an interview in months. The Walker house had become a silent warning in the domestic help community. Maya stepped onto the stone path leading to the front door as the gate swung open. The mansion loomed before her, elegant, imposing, and somehow cold. It looked like a house that had forgotten what warmth felt like. The door opened. A man stood there, tall, impeccably dressed, but his face carried the marks of exhaustion. His eyes were deep, shadowed, the kind that belonged to someone who hadn't slept hundreds of nights. He extended his hand. "I'm Ethan Walker." Maya took his hand, firm but gentle. "A pleasure to meet you, Mr. Walker. I'm Maya Carter." Crossing the threshold, Maya didn't glance around like others had. She didn't marvel at the paintings or the polished floors. What caught her attention was a family photo hanging on the wall. A radiant woman in a white dress held 3 laughing boys, and behind her, a younger, brighter Ethan smiled, unaware that the moment captured would be their last together. Maya looked at the picture longer than she should have, then whispered, "Your wife was beautiful." Ethan froze for a moment. No one had mentioned Grace in his presence since the accident. Somehow, this woman didn't look away from his pain. She met it head on. They sat down in the living room. Silence hung between them for a few seconds. Only the clock ticking filled the air. Ethan spoke first. "You know, 17 people have tried this job. Some quit on the first day. Some didn't even bother to say goodbye." Maya smiled, calm, steady, compassionate. "I didn't come here to run." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "I need someone experienced with special children. Someone with degrees or at least a background in child psychology." Maya nodded, her voice composed. "I don't have any degrees, but I have 8 years of living with hurt children, and a childhood that taught me exactly what it feels like when your world collapses." Ethan looked up, really looked at her for the first time. His eyes were cautious, yet something in them softened. "You said a hurt childhood. What do you mean by that?" Maya exhaled, smiling faintly, a smile touched with sorrow but not weakness. "When I was 7, my parents died in a fire. I went through 11 different homes before I was old enough to leave the foster system. I know what it feels like to hear someone say, 'Don't worry, I'll be back,' and then never come back." The room fell silent again. Ethan listened, his expression caught between surprise and respect. She wasn't speaking like someone seeking pity, but like someone who had turned pain into strength. "Mr. Walker," Maya continued, her tone soft but sure, "I've read about you and your sons. I don't think they're bad children. I think they're 3 small hearts that don't know how to live with loss yet." Ethan leaned back slightly. "Others have said the same thing. But when they saw my boys throwing things, biting, breaking furniture, they called them problems. What would you call them?" Maya didn't hesitate. "I'd call them pain that hasn't been touched yet." The words silenced Ethan. Something cracked inside him, a minor fracture in the wall he'd built for 6 long months. He pressed a hand against the table, staring at her for a long moment before speaking quietly. "I don't know why, but I feel a little hope for the first time." Maya smiled faintly. "Hope is good. But children don't need an adult's hope. They need an adult who stays." Ethan nodded slowly, wondering whether he still dared to stay. "When can you start?" "Tomorrow, 7 a.m. Maya stood, adjusted her bag, then paused at the doorway. Her following words struck deep, words Ethan would never forget. You've already lost a wife. Don't let your children lose their father, too. Ethan stood motionless, watching her walk away. A gentle breeze slipped through the hall, carrying the faint scent of jasmine from her dress. And for the first time in many months, the mansion didn't feel empty anymore. The next morning, sunlight streamed gently through the California trees, spilling across the driveway of the Walker mansion. The air was crisp and calm, but inside, no one knew that a battle was about to begin. At exactly 7 a.m., Maya Carter arrived at the door, a small bag slung over her shoulder. She carried a thermos of hot coffee, a few comic books, and a tin of homemade cookies. When Ethan opened the door, he looked like he hadn't slept. Dark circles under his eyes, his shirt wrinkled, his voice low and weary. "They're still asleep," he murmured. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Maya smiled softly and handed in the coffee. "I brought this for you. They say tired parents don't need miracles, just a cup of coffee and someone standing beside them." Ethan froze for a moment. He couldn't even remember the last time someone had thought of something that simple. "Thank you, Maya." "Just call me Maya," she said. "And don't worry. No matter what happens today, I'll still be here." That line, light as it sounded, felt to Ethan like a promise none of the 17 before her had ever made. Then came the sound of footsteps on the stairs. A shout echoed through the house. "Food fight!" They exchanged glances. Ethan sighed. "There, you see, it's already begun." Maya chuckled and calmly followed the noise. The kitchen looked like a war zone of syrup, pancake batter, and orange juice. 3 boys, Liam, Noah, and Caleb, stood in the middle of it all. One was standing on a chair wielding a syrup bottle like a water gun. Another was rolling on the floor, laughing hysterically. When they saw Maya, all 3 froze, staring at her with the mix of challenge and caution that only hurt children can master. The oldest, Liam, spoke first. "You're the new one, huh? You'll quit soon enough." Maya didn't respond. Instead, she looked around the sticky chaos, then calmly pulled out a chair and sat down right in the middle of it. "You know what?" she said softly. "You boys are excellent." They blinked, confused. "This whole kitchen, syrup, flour, orange juice everywhere, and no one's hurt. That's impressive." The triplets exchanged puzzled glances. No adult had ever said anything like that before. Noah frowned. "You're not mad?" Maya shook her head, smiling. "No, actually, I think it's kind of fun. Looks like you had a very energetic morning." The boys fell silent. Something in their eyes shifted, as if they no longer knew whether to attack or surrender. Maya slowly opened her bag and pulled out a small cookie tin. "I brought these," she said. "It's my mom's recipe. I usually bake them when I miss her. But maybe you don't need them. You all look pretty full of syrup already." Caleb, the youngest, lifted his head. "No, we're not." "What kind of cookies?" "Chocolate chip. My mom's favorite." Maya set the tin on the table but didn't push it toward them. She just sat there, calm, patient, as though the chaos around her didn't matter. Finally, Noah dragged a chair closer. "You're really not afraid of us?" "No," she said gently, "because I understand. When people are hurting, they push others away, just to see who's patient enough to stay." The air in the room softened. No more clattering spoons, no more laughter, just quiet understanding. The boys stared at her. Something in their expressions warmed, fragile, uncertain, but real. Maya continued, her voice tender. I used to be like you. I lost my parents when I was little. I got angry. I broke things. If I scared people away first, I thought it would hurt less when they left me. But then I realized I was turning into the very person I feared most, the one who leaves. Liam swallowed hard, his voice barely a whisper. Do you miss them? Every day. But I've learned something. When someone you love leaves, the love they gave you doesn't disappear. It just finds another way to stay. A tear slipped down Caleb's cheek. He wiped it quickly and whispered, Mom used to say that too. Maya's eyes shimmered. Then your mom was a very wise woman. And I believe, if she's watching right now, she's very proud of you. The boys fell silent. Then, almost instinctively, they stepped closer to the table. Caleb reached for a cookie. Can I try one? Of course, Maya said. He took a bite. His eyes lit up. It's excellent. The other two joined in, pulling chairs closer. And in that moment, in that messy, syrup-stained kitchen, something shifted. The house that had known only chaos felt warm again, like a ray of sunlight slipping through a long, closed window. From the hallway, Ethan Walker stood watching quietly. He could hardly believe it. His 3 sons, who couldn't sit still for more than 2 minutes, were sitting at the table, eating cookies, laughing with a woman they'd met just hours ago. He stood there, motionless. In 20 minutes, she had done what he hadn't been able to do in 6 months. Make them feel safe again. He turned away before anyone could see him smile. And maybe, just maybe, wipe away a tear. That afternoon, the Walker kitchen still carried the warm scent of cookies and syrup. Outside, the triplets raced around the yard laughing, shouting Maya's name. Ethan sat at his desk, trying to focus on the stack of unanswered emails. But his mind wouldn't stay still. It kept drifting back to that morning, to the sight of his 3 sons sitting at the breakfast table, sunlight streaming through Maya's curls, and the first genuine smile he'd seen on his children's faces in 6 long months. Then his phone rang. On the screen, Mark Davis, personal attorney. Ethan answered, his tone calm but tired. Mark, what's wrong? Conversely, the lawyer's voice was firm, seasoned, but urgent. Ethan, I need you to stay calm. Tonight's C News segment. It's about you. Ethan frowned. About me? What do you mean? A special report. The title, Billionaire's Demon Triplets, When Money Can't Fix a Broken Family. They interviewed 3 of your former nannies. It's not flattering. Silence. Outside the window, he could still hear his sons laughing. But now that the echo of unseen judgment drowned out laughter, it still drowned laughter. What did they say? They called the boys dangerous, out of control. One even said they had serious psychological issues. And they're painting you as a father who abandoned his kids to chase money. Ethan froze, guilt rising in his chest like a tide. Oh, God. And one more thing, Mark continued. They know you just hired a new nanny. She could be dragged into this. Maya, right? Ethan gripped the phone tighter, silent. He thought of Maya, her steady, calm, quiet courage, and the way she spoke to his sons with kindness that she didn't pity but understood. He knew what the media would do to her. They would mock her, twist her, drag her into the same mud they'd thrown at him. I'll handle it, Mark, he said quietly, and hung up. He headed straight to the kitchen. Maya sat cross-legged on the floor with the boys helping them build a castle from wooden blocks. As Ethan stepped closer, Caleb looked up, eyes bright. "Daddy, look! We're building a castle for Mommy in heaven!" Ethan stopped dead in his tracks. He couldn't remember the last time his sons had spoken about their mother without anger, without breaking down. His throat tightened. He forced a smile. "It's beautiful, boys." Then Liam looked up, suspicion in his eyes. "Daddy, why do you look sad? Is Miss Maya leaving?" Maya glanced at him. She could see the truth in his expression, the weight he was trying to hide. Ethan took a breath, gestured for the boys to keep playing, then said softly, "Miss Maya, can we talk for a moment?" They stepped into the living room. Ethan turned, looking like a man who had just inherited half the world's burden. "There's a news segment airing tonight," he said quietly. "About me, the boys, and you. They'll say cruel things, lies, things that could hurt you. I won't blame you if you want to leave before it airs." Maya was silent momentarily, then gave a small, calm smile. "Do you believe your sons are demons, Ethan?" He blinked, startled, almost offended. "Of course not. They're just grieving." "Then why are you afraid of what people who don't know them will say?" Her question hit him like an arrow, straight through the wall he'd built around himself. He had no answer. Maya stepped closer, voice soft but unshakable. "I've been judged my whole life, for my skin, my past, my job. But I learned something. Only the people who genuinely love you have the right to define you. Everyone else, they're just telling the world about their fears." She paused, eyes unwavering. "If you want me to go, I will. But if you want your sons to learn that they are loved, even when the world calls them broken, then tonight, we'll watch the news together, as a family." Ethan stared at her. Part of him wanted to protest, to protect her, but the other part knew she was right. He nodded slowly. "All right. But what if it hurts them?" "Then they'll learn," she said gently, "that pain isn't the end of love. It's where love begins again." That evening, they sat together in the living room. The three boys nestled close against their father. Maya sat beside them, calm, present. On the TV, the anchor's voice filled the room. "Billionaire's demon triplets. 17 nannies have quit in 6 months. Are these boys beyond saving?" Photos flashed across the screen. The triplets caught mid-tantrum, their faces distorted by the camera's cruelty. Noah squeezed Maya's hand. "Miss Maya, are they calling us demons?" Ethan opened his mouth, but Maya spoke first. Her voice was steady, warm. "They don't see what I see. I see 3 brave boys, brave enough to be angry because they loved their mother so much. I see 3 children smart enough to test grown-ups to know who will stay." The anchor's voice continued. "One former nanny described the boys as damaged beyond repair." Liam's voice trembled. "Are we really broken?" Maya pulled all 3 boys close, wrapping her arms around them. Her voice was soft, filled with warmth that felt like light. "No, sweetheart, none of us is broken. We're just hurting. And hurting isn't wrong. Grief isn't something to fix. It's something to honor." Ethan looked at her, really looked. In that moment, he didn't see a nanny. He saw the person who was helping his family learn to breathe again. When the broadcast ended, silence filled the room. Caleb leaned against Maya's shoulder, whispering, "I don't want you to go anywhere." She smiled, stroking his hair. "I'm not going anywhere. Because real love doesn't run away, even when people say it's wrong." Ethan turned to her, his voice low, grateful, a confession wrapped in admiration. "Thank you for not being afraid." Maya met his gaze. "People who've lived through darkness, Ethan, don't fear it anymore. They just learn how to turn on the light for others." 3 days later, morning in the Walker household began with the smell of sweet pancakes and the sound of laughter floating from the kitchen. Maya and the triplets wore aprons, their hands dusted with flowers. They baked and sang off-key together. Ethan leaned quietly against the doorway, watching, afraid that if he blinked, this dreamlike peace might disappear. He was just about to smile when his phone rang. The voice on the other end made that smile fade instantly. "Mr. Walker, this is the California Child Protective Services. We've received several reports following the recent news broadcast. We'll need to schedule an official home visit." Ethan froze. "You mean an inspection of my family?" "Yes, sir. We'll send a social worker to observe the living environment of your 3 sons. It's standard protocol to ensure they're safe and properly cared for." He gripped the phone tightly, his knuckles turning white. When he finally hung up, his pulse was pounding. Maya noticed the shift in his face. "What happened?" she asked softly. He exhaled, barely above a whisper. "They're coming to decide whether I'm still fit to keep my sons." The words dropped heavily in the room. The triplets, who had been giggling a moment ago, went silent. Caleb stepped closer, voice trembling. "They're not gonna take us away, right?" Ethan knelt and hugged his son tightly. "No, buddy. I won't let anyone take you. Ever." But he wasn't sure he could keep that promise even as he said it. A negative report from Child Protective Services could cost him everything, even custody. The kitchen fell into uneasy silence. Then Maya stepped forward and gently rested a hand on his shoulder. "Let me try something different." Ethan looked up, wary. "Different?" "Instead of fearing them, let's invite them in. Let them not just look, but see. Let them see the children we see daily, children learning to trust love again." Ethan hesitated. "You want them here all day?" "Yes, all day. Because if a single day isn't enough for them to see the miracle in these boys, then no report could ever do this family justice." 3 mornings later, at exactly 9 a.m., a middle-aged woman in a crisp gray suit arrived at the Walker estate. Her name tag read, Karen Mitchell, Child Protective Services. Her tone was clipped, professional. "I'm here to observe. I don't judge, but I will record everything I see." Maya met her with a calm, genuine smile. "Welcome, Mrs. Mitchell. We've prepared breakfast for you. The boys are quite excited. They wanted to bake you some cookies themselves." Karen blinked, slightly thrown off by the warmth. She didn't reply, only opened her notebook. But then she paused, because what she saw in the kitchen wasn't what she expected. The triplets were tricky at work. Liam is measuring flour with a stainless steel spoon. Noah was stirring the batter with focus, and Caleb was carefully pressing chocolate chips onto a baking tray. "What are you 3 doing?" she asked, her tone unconsciously softening. "We're baking cookies for Daddy and his office friends," Caleb said proudly. "Miss Maya says people who work hard deserve something sweet." Karen froze for a second. There was no shouting, no chaos, just laughter, gentle, steady, alive. Maya invited her to sit. I know you've heard a lot about this family, she said kindly, but maybe today you'll hear something different from the boys themselves. Liam, the eldest, looked up, eyes serious beyond his years. I'm sorry everyone thought we were bad. We're not bad. We're just scared that if we like someone, they'll leave, like Mom did. Karen's pen stopped mid-page. Not because of the words, but because of the honesty in his voice, unfiltered, brave, heartbreakingly sincere. Noah spoke next. Miss Maya doesn't make us forget Mom. She tells us stories about herself. She says it's okay to be sad, because missing someone is just another way of keeping them. Karen fell silent. She looked at Ethan, sitting quietly in the corner, eyes glistening. Then back at Maya, whose calm presence radiated something warm, steady, healing. She stayed the entire day. She saw Maya gently comfort Caleb after he dropped a glass of milk and panicked. She saw Ethan kneel to tie Noah's shoelaces before they went outside. She saw the triplets clearing the table together, laughing, teasing, and helping. By late afternoon, as sunlight turned gold across the veranda, Karen closed her notebook. Her voice had softened. Her voice had softened completely. Mr. Walker, I've done this job for over 20 years. I've seen homes full of shouting and so quiet they could break your heart. But today, I saw a family learning how to breathe again after the storm. Ethan bowed his head, his voice trembling. Thank you. We're trying. A little more each day. Karen turned to Maya, eyes gentler than before. Miss Carter, I don't know how you've done it, but these boys look at you like they've just found something they thought they'd lost forever. No report I could ever write would capture that. But if I had to, I'd write just one line. This isn't a home under supervision. It's a home in healing. At the door, before leaving, she paused and said softly to Ethan, You're a lucky man. Not everyone gets a second chance at what they've lost. But you did. And her name is Maya Carter. The door closed gently behind her, leaving the house bathed in the amber light of evening. The triplets ran to Maya, wrapping their small arms around her. Ethan stood still, unable to speak, watching the scene unfold. Inside his chest, something shifted, something quiet but real. For the first time, he truly believed they could be a family again. Since the day the social worker left, the Walker mansion was no longer the somber place it once was. It didn't need saving anymore, because love had begun to light up every shadow within its walls. Time passed. 6 months went by. The triplets, once feared as the demon boys, had now become the pride of their neighborhood. Liam learned to calm his anger by keeping a journal. Noah loved gardening with Maya, saying, Plants grow slowly, kind of like our hearts healing. And Caleb, the youngest, still ran into his father's room every morning, kissed him on the cheek and whispered, I love you, Daddy. Ethan had changed, too. He started leaving the office early, taking his sons to school, and cooking dinner with Maya. He was no longer a father running from grief, but a man walking through it, learning again what it meant to be a dad. One quiet evening, after the boys had gone to bed, Ethan entered the garden. Maya was sitting on an old wooden chair, the one Grace used to sit in to read. The porch light cast a soft glow across her calm, gentle face. He sat beside her, silent for a few moments before saying softly, You know, there were days when I thought I'd never crawl out of that emptiness. Then you came along, and I realized Sometimes God doesn't send someone to replace what was lost, but to remind us that love can begin again. Maya turned to him, her eyes tender and steady. You don't need saving, Ethan. You just needed someone to remind you that you're still enough to be loved again. Ethan smiled faintly, reached into his pocket, and pulled out a small velvet box. You saved my boys, Maya. But the truth is, you saved me too. He opened the box. Inside was a simple ring, a small stone glinting softly in the light. Maya Carter, would you like to become an official part of the Walker family? Maya froze, hands trembling. Then she laughed through tears. I don't know if I deserve this. Ethan took her hands gently, his voice low but warm. You don't just deserve it. You're the missing piece we've been waiting for far too long. Tears shimmered down her cheeks as she nodded. Yes, I'd love to. They embraced beneath the quiet night sky, a soft breeze stirring the jasmine, as if the whole world exhaled in relief. Their wedding took place right there in the garden. The triplets, dressed in tiny tuxedos, marched down the aisle of white flowers, fighting over who would carry the ring. They stood together and spoke their little vow. Miss Maya, we promise to be good. We'll always remember Mom, and we'll love you too, just like her. And we'll remind Dad to eat lunch every day. Laughter filled the garden, tears and joy blending into one. They say there's no such thing as a perfect family. Only people brave enough to stay and rebuild together. The Walkers were living proof. 2 years later, Maya gave birth to a baby girl, Lily. She had Ethan's blue eyes and Maya's gentle smile. Her 3 big brothers fought over turns to hold her, each promising, "We'll protect Lily the way Dad protected us." Ethan went on to establish the Grace Foundation, a charity for single parents and children who've lost loved ones, named after his late wife, not to forget her, but to honor her. Maya wrote a book titled Healing the Broken Child, a heartfelt account of their journey, and it became a source of inspiration for thousands. On Grace's Memorial Day, the family visited her grave every year. There were no more tears, only peaceful smiles. The boys placed flowers down gently, whispering, "Mom, you don't have to worry anymore. Daddy laughs again now, and Miss Maya takes really good care of us." Maya stood quietly behind them, holding Ethan's hand and bowing her head. Thank you for letting me love them as if they were my own. Ethan squeezed her hand and whispered back, and thank you for loving the part of me I once thought unlovable. They stood in silence as the wind brushed through the trees, carrying the soft scent of jasmine, Grace's favorite. And somewhere, perhaps, she was smiling. Sometimes, the hearts that have been most broken become the safest place for love to live. And sometimes, the real miracle isn't being saved, but finding someone who stays when you no longer believe you're worth loving. That is the story of the Walker family, from ruin to rebirth, from sorrow to laughter. A gentle reminder that no matter how deep the loss, if even one person chooses to stay, love can always begin again. If this story touched you, share it, and help spread the belief that every heart can heal if it's loved the right way. This is Deep Life Tales, where true stories reach the deepest part of who we are. Leave a comment, share your thoughts, and if you still believe that love is real, stay with us.